Hello, dear viewer, and welcome to another episode of the Catholic League Forum. I'm Mike McDonald, Director of Communications of the Catholic League, and joining me today is President and CEO of the Catholic League, Bill Donohue. Now, dear viewer, last week we were talking about Bill Donohue's new book, The War on Virtue. In part one, sort of giving a little bit of an overview of the thesis of the book. So I would highly recommend you go watch that now if you haven't already seen it. This is part two of that series. And today I want to talk about the policy implications that you raised in the book, Bill. But before we dive into that, just in case if our dear viewers a little crunch for time, can you just give us a little summary of the thesis?
Right. We'll deal with the policy stuff today, as you said. Basically, what the book is about is saying that you can't succeed in American society and attain the American dream, and unless you exercise what I call the vital virtues: personal responsibility, perseverance, and self-control, self-discipline. If you have those virtues, you're likely to succeed. If you don't have them, you're not going to succeed in any walk of life. I mentioned Asians, Jews, Mormons, and Nigerians as being the most successful demographic groups in attaining educational and economic success.
Yeah, absolutely. And the book's doing very well.
Yes.
It's available on
Yep.
Amazon, the Sophia Press, and I guess wherever else books are sold. But you can check that out on our website. Give you some more information about it. It's available on Kindle, and hopefully soon will be out on audio as well. So a lot of different ways to check out the book. Do check out our website, catholicleague.org, to get a copy of the book, to find out where to get a book. Really good source of information there on if you want a copy of the book. And it's moving pretty quick, folks, so do check that out. Now, Bill, let's get into the meat of the matter. One of the things that seems to be a constant theme in your book is the role of the family, particularly in promoting the vital virtues that you just laid out. How does the family do that? Why is it so important to instill those virtues?
The nuclear family, the father, the mother, the children, is absolutely the gold standard. It's the blue chip one. Don't believe what the left tells you, that there are all kinds of other arrangements. Yes, there are. And I'm not downgrading single moms. I'm simply saying they can't do it as well by themselves as if you have a father and a mother. Notice I didn't say two people. I said a father and a mother, because they bring with them certain kinds of characteristics which are unique to male and female. If you come from an intact family, hopefully, it's not a guarantee, it's not a lock, they will teach the children the idea that you're responsible for yourself, you've got to persevere in society, and you've got to exercise some degree of self-control. If you don't have that instilled at a young age, these kids are off to a very bad start. So we should not be undermining the nuclear family. We should be strengthening it.
Yep. And to the point of undermining it, one of the other contentions you have in the book is that the ruling class is actively working to sabotage the nuclear family, the traditional family as we understand it. How are they going about doing that?
Well, they constantly tell us, the Biden administration does it, the corporate elites have gone along with this, that there are many different ways you can raise children and they're all equal. That's not true. It is simply absolutely wrong. The social science evidence is clear that the model one is the nuclear family. And by trying to say that every different alternative lifestyle matters, it simply contradicts the social science evidence on this. And what we should be doing is paying attention to what we would know as common sense. Common sense would tell you that if you just look around at one-parent families and you're trying to get extended families and people cohabiting, and there's all kinds of relationships. We understand that. But they're not all equal, okay? There is a hierarchy, and at the top is the nuclear.
Yeah. And one of the other themes you have in there is also the sexual revolution. How does that fit into what's going on with the ruling class and the destruction?
Well,
of
the sexual revolution basically preaches that, every individual can make up his own idea of what is right and wrong, and that constraints on sexuality are inhibiting and therefore oppressive. If you don't put a brake on your id, on your pleasure principle, this is particularly true of men, you're going to be acting in a promiscuous lifestyle. And if that happens, look out for the STDs, then just where you get the abortions and the like. So yes, it's important to exercise a measure of constraint. Jews and Catholics and Protestants understand the Judeo-Christian ethos. It comes from our Jewish brothers and sisters, that there's got to be a modicum of constraint. If you don't put a harness on your most base primordial appetites, you're likely to run amok. And it's very important that we emphasize that.
Yeah. And now getting into a little bit more on specifics, and I think The War on Virtue does a very good job on this. I actually don't think there's been a book since Eric Banfield's The Unheavenly City that deals so well with this topic. But how is the public policy issue that is coming from the ruling class particularly damaging the black family in America?
Well, the black family has suffered tremendously. We had disproportionate numbers of men than women because the men were needed as slaves in this country. Whenever you have that kind of sex ratio imbalance, you're going to have problems. Now, it is true that those blacks who were not slave, who were, quote, free, their family was intact. That was the beginning of the black bourgeoisie, or the first black middle class. So it is racist to say that blacks can't have good families. Of course they can have good families. It was the slave situation that created the problem. The black family, so it did get off to a rough start. Daniel Patrick Moynihan maybe overemphasized that a bit, but he was right to note in the 1960s that there was something seriously going wrong in the black family. As recently as the 1950s, it was relatively intact. What happened in the 60s is that the welfare state, promoted by the elites, created a sense of dependency and gave an invitation, an incentive to the father to leave the family so that his wife and children would actually get more money. So the black family was destroyed largely starting in the 1960s with dependency. That's when the out of wedlock rate shot up to what's up to now about 70%.
Yeah. And this introduction of the welfare state, do you think there was anything sort of intentional and that it's designed to actually target the family?
There's a very good book that came out a number of years ago, Mike, about the cost of good intentions, and sometimes people do mean well, and you've got bad intentions. However, it's important to note that there are people who intentionally wanted to destroy the black family because they wanted to create a situation where the government would come in, the federal government, for example, crash New York City, and then the government comes in and institutes socialism. I'm being very specific. I'm talking about Francis Fox Piven and Richard Cloward. It's a husband and wife team out of Columbia University. To this day, they don't regret what they've done. They use blacks as pawns, okay, to promote a political radical agenda. That was their goal. So sometimes it's been unintentional. Other times the left has intentionally kind of played with the black family. That's one of the points of my book, that the white ruling class intentionally are out there trying to say that blacks can't succeed like everybody else. That's racist. Blacks can succeed like everybody else if you give them the vital virtues. How do you think the black middle class is done so well? They didn't do it because of the government. They did it because of hard work, self-reliance, perseverance, etc.
Yeah. In addition to the family, Bill, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. One of the other things that you talk about in the book a lot is education and how important that is. So let's just take it back to sort of the thesis. You bring up the virtues. How do they play in educational attainment?
Well, we know one thing for sure, that the more homework is given to a child and the more he does, the better that child is likely to do. Nobody gives more homework, more than any other group, than the Asians. Blacks give the least, all right? And the reason why blacks give the least homework, largely because the woman has to try and do everything. So there's that situation again. Instead of encouraging intact families and helping the black families along, we're actually saying that to live in a nuclear family is a good example of whiteness. Whiteness. So that they've thrown a racial element on top of that. You've got a situation today where they actually teach in the schools that to believe that there's proper spelling and mathematics is an example of whiteness, the scientific measure. The objectivity, if you strive for objectivity, that's a white kind of issue. You know, this is, if you couldn't make a better prescription to destroy students today than to convince them, white, black, Asian, I don't care who they are, Hispanic, that to strive hard and work hard, and that there's such a thing as correct spelling and correct mathematics and arithmetic. If you're teaching that that's wrong, then what would you expect? This is intentional. It's not a mistake, people. The ruling class knows what it's doing because there's an element within the ruling class. I'm not saying every elite, but there's an element there which hates America. Get it through your head. They hate America. They hate Western civilization. They hate God, they hate human nature, and they use these kind of issues as a prop as a vehicle toward their end.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very interesting how all these things play in together. Now, one of the things that you hear about in a lot of education policy circles, we just need to spend more money on education.
Yeah.
Does that work? Would that help to sort of get the virtues intact?
If money was correlated with academic achievement, then Washington, D.C. should be number one. Actually, they're number 51. After the 50 states, they come in last and they spend the most. New York City spends an enormous amount of money. It's got a lousy record. No, there's no correlation. As a matter of fact, if anything, the less you spend, the better you tend to do. Take a look at North Dakota, South Dakota, New Hampshire, and places like that. Look, too much money leads to too many administrators, leads to too many people getting busy. We have good teachers in this country, lots of them. Let them do their job. Don't constantly overwhelm them with unnecessary paperwork and the like. No, there's no correlation between money. Some people have said, well, isn't it true that the kids from the affluent families do better? Yeah, that's because of the vital virtues. It's not because of money. So in other words, if we just threw money at poor people, all of a sudden, the kid's going to do well in school? No, you have to do the model of the Asians. They give a lot of homework, and the kids come home from school, and they work with their parents. That's why they do well. Asians are not just naturally gifted. They work hard with the vital virtues.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the things that you sort of touched on a little bit, but let's just highlight it a little bit more for the dear viewer, is this trend of equity education. How is that working out in the school system?
Well, that's the idea that they're basically giving up on blacks. They're just basically saying that we're going to do away with the elite schools. We're going to do away with SATs. We're going to do away with advanced placement. Is everyone crazy? Everybody knows who in the class is doing better than somebody else and who's diligent and who's not diligent. This is a recipe for failure. They're trying to push everybody across the finish line. It's like as if you have a track meet. You know, in the real world, in a track meet, if you have 10 people running in the half mile, somebody comes in first, somebody comes in second, just like in a horse race, right? You can't have everybody coming across the finish line at the same time unless you just, the whole thing's a fraud. You have to hold somebody else back in order to push the other guy forward. Instead of taking the people at the bottom and moving them up, we're punishing the people at the top and we're moving them down. It's insane.
Yeah. And similarly, we're talking about all these problems that are in the education space. Are there any sort of schools that actually do a good job, that actually do function great?
Sure, a lot of private schools do. The charter schools, which are public schools, they happen to be privately run, but they're public schools. They do a magnificent job. Catholic schools, where I worked in Spanish Harlem back in the 1970s, they do a magnificent job. All the data show that. Now, you would think, this is one of the tests for me, if you really are against racism, and if you truly want to help out African Americans, you must be in favor of school choice. You must be in favor of charter schools. You must be in favor of giving the poor blacks the same opportunities that are afforded by white, middle class, and upper class people. They all send their kids, the Joe Bidens and the Kamala Harris's stepson and everybody else, they all send their kids to private schools. Hillary Clinton, it's all in the book, okay? But they hate the private schools for everybody else. This is a way of keeping blacks in their place. It's not a mistake. They are beholden to the teachers union. They don't care about black kids. If they did, they'd be in favor of charter schools, school choice. They'd be in favor of tax credits. They'd be in favor of vouchers. They'd allow their kids to go to the Catholic schools. Instead, they want to keep them right where they are.
Yeah. And another thing that I think you laid out that really ties into this as well is the uptick in crime. I mean, everyone at this point has probably seen the violence in Chicago last weekend. That there are some serious real-world value interactions here. So how does the weakening of the vital virtues by the ruling class play into this uptick in crime we're seeing across the country?
You know, I don't mention it in this particular book, but let me go back to other stuff that I've written in this subject. Travis Hershey's a California sociologist, did great work on this. The right question when it comes to crime is not why do some people commit crime. The real question is why doesn't everyone? In other words, why do you pay a fare to when you get on the subway or the train? Why don't you just steal food when you can? Why don't you just take what you want? Why don't you just have an affair with your neighbor's wife? People want to do these things, right? But why don't you? Because you're told it's wrong. You're told thou shalt not. if you come from certain kinds of families, you're told to put a harness on your appetites, that you're supposed to check your worst impulses. That's why. You're taught that these things are morally wrong. Now, if that's not taught, then you see what we see today, which is absolute, utter mayhem. You've got to accept personal responsibility for yourself, even if you've been dealt a bad deck of cards.
Right.
And some people have. So whole groups have. But only you can get yourself out of that. And not everybody is a victim, okay? Please. I mean, are we supposed to believe that every time we have a crime, that the crime victim is a victim, and so is the guy who victimized him because he's a victim of society? That's what they're teaching. That's what the left is teaching. That's why you have no accountability. It's one of the reasons why you have so much crime.
Yeah. And Bill, we did discuss a lot of heavy subjects here, and it does kind of paint a little bit more of a depressing picture. But is there any way that we can turn this around? Let's give our dear viewers some hope.
Yes, there is. First of all, I would say check your gut. All right? Common sense. The elites have let us down in healthcare, military, FBI, corporate, government, schools, autistic community, entertainment, media. They've let us down. And I'm not saying that you should just simply not listen to them at all. I don't want people to become so cynical as they say, oh, don't listen to these people. I am saying this, be skeptical. Be skeptical. And if you hear something that sounds to you that it seems counterintuitive, it doesn't seem to work, you know from your own experience, it doesn't seem to gel, trust your gut before you trust the expert. Just because the person has some alphabet after his name, PhD, MD, Esquire, whatever, doesn't mean that they're telling the truth, doesn't mean even that they're competent. Again, I'm not saying to dismiss all of these people, but the time has come where we just can't trust the ruling class. I love law enforcement. I come from a family of that. But there's corruption at the head of the DOJ and the FBI today. I hate to say that, but it's true. So we need to weed out the corruption in the ruling class, trust ourselves. We need a renorming of our society. The Catholic Church's teachings, the social teachings, the moral teachings are good. They're sound. They are the recipe for the good society. Go back and read what the Catholic Church teaches. We took our teachings on sexuality from the Jews. Find out about that. It all makes sense. And don't believe these people who say, oh, sure, just exercise your id, you'll have a good time. You'll wind up in the morgue real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, dear viewer, that's going to conclude our two-part series on the War on Virtue. Again, that's available on Amazon, Sophia Institute Press. You can find all the places you can get it on our website, catholicleague.org. We'll have a link in the description below. So next week, Bill, is on April 27th, Thursday, is going to be the Catholic League's 50th anniversary, big gala here in New York. On Wednesday, we'll do a special episode of the forum,
Yes, we will.
taking a look at the last 50
Right.
years. So, dear viewer, be sure to check that out next Wednesday. And while you're on our website, checking out the War on Virtue, do also consider signing up for our emails. A lot of great information there. We had a lot of stuff going on this week, so take a look at that. And do consider becoming a member. We're a member-driven organization. We've only made it 50 years because of you, frankly. So if you would like to become a member, check that out as well. And as always, if you could give this video a like and subscribe, that would greatly help us get the message out. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.